Welcome to the BankTalk podcast, the show where we talk to leaders and experts from the community banking sector. Whether you are a current CEO or aspire to be one, this podcast will give you valuable insights and advice on how to run your financial institution better. Each episode explores a new topic with a guest who brings their unique experience and knowledge. Tune in and discover something new each time you listen.
Hi, welcome to BankTalk. My name is Rich Carty, sales executive here with Remedy Consulting. Today we have a great episode lined up. We'll be joined by Alida De Maria, the Executive Vice President and COO at People's Bank. We'll be diving into the integration and the adoption of Nimbus on their core technology. Within the modern banking core, we'll hear a little bit about the decisions that were made to move that way and pros, cons, and just to kind of have a great conversation in that sense. Hi, Alida. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Rich. Thanks for having me.
No problem at all. We appreciate your time. We gave an intro to the Nimbus side of the house, but why don't you give an intro to People's Bank, a little bit about yourself and the Nimbus installation and the timeline and kind of the background there.
Absolutely. So I am the Chief Operating Officer for People's Bank. We are a mutual, and at our mutual holding company level, we have two banks reporting in to the MHC. So we have People's Bank and Cornerstone Bank, which I oversee both entities right now. And our entry into the Nimbus, so we're talking about the Nimbus Modern Core platform, came to us on the People's Bank side almost, oh my goodness, we're talking about 7 years ago. We've started our relationship with Nimbus, and it came about because we wanted to launch a digital bank. That's how all of this started. And so when we were looking to launch a digital bank, we were looking at our existing core provider at the time, and some of the things that we wanted to do, we just couldn't do at the time, and that led us to finding Nimbus. So we launched what is now affectionately known as a sidecar core. It wasn't called a sidecar core at the time, but that's kind of the name that came out of it.
Yep.
But we launched a sidecar core in 2020 called Zinlo Bank, and it's fully owned by People's Bank, but it is our fully national digital-only bank. And so that began our journey on the Nimbus relationship and kind of brought us where we are today, which in June of 25, we converted our People's Bank legacy core platform to Nimbus's modern core platform.
Gotcha. Thanks. That's great insight of the start and where that went. When you did the change in 2020, were there many other options out there? How did you discover, I guess, a Nimbus, or how did they kind of win you guys over?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and one of the questions I'm asked the most. So it really comes back to a time where we had very specific intentions of what we wanted to do with our digital bank. And we were running up against roadblocks with exactly how we wanted to do it with our legacy core platform. And so we said, well, kind of if our legacy core platform can't do it, we're not going to look at another legacy core platform to do this. So we started looking in the fintech space. And then what we found Nimbus's digital bank in the box. They call it their launch product, where they have the opportunity to launch a digital bank on their core platform, which is fully cloud-based, fully API enabled, so truly a modern core. And you can connect with any partners that you wanted. There was a lot of flexibility in what we wanted to do with customization, both within the core and on the digital front end from the customer's perspective. And we really liked what we saw. And there was no one else in the marketplace that was packaging this whole, for lack of a better term, bank in a box. And so for on the Zinlo side of the house, Nimbus does all of the back office processing, so the BPO services, the call center. So it really was a great low cost entry way for us to go fully national in the digital space. And then once we kind of learned what Nimbus could do, we were being introduced to new partners that we really didn't know as a community bank were even out there that began us spreading our relationship with Nimbus. And we started by not only do we have the digital bank, but then we brought their online account opening services to our People's Bank brand and said, we really like what they have to offer. Let's bring this back home to the mothership. And we found ourselves doing that more and more, finding stuff that we found through this Zinlo launch that we did, and ultimately led us to becoming a BAS bank and converting our core.
Awesome. Yeah, we talked to a lot of people in the industry that it seems like that sidecar, in quotations, I guess, is a good way to dip the toes in and get a feel for how that is. But obviously, with your size, we were at Acquired, and I know you guys spoke there on that. You guys are a larger size of the brick and mortar side that has kind of taken that on within the core now. So thanks again for that insight and share.
Absolutely.
You talked about the roadblocks of some of the bigger core names that are out there in the market. Is there anything else that you'd want to mention that you've seen in this more, I guess, open banking type environment? You talked about the partners and so forth, but anything else you'd want to talk differentiators between the two?
Yeah, so when we were looking at Nimbus and we said, hey, let's look at converting our legacy core, hey, who else was out there? So we did our due diligence for the board, for our customers, for the regulators to say, who else was out there that was doing this? So there was another solution at the time, but it wasn't full banking solution. And we're like, they're definitely not there yet. And then we started to look at this concept of microservices and say, okay, well, can we just connect things to our current core to make it more modern and to get where we wanted to go? And at the end of the day, we really kind of ended on, yeah, but at the core is the core, right? And so if we pick and choose all of these microservices that we kind of want to wrap around the core to get to where we want to be in 10 or 15 years, we weren't confident that, for lack of a better term, that Frankensteining the solution was really the way that we wanted to go. And that's really where we landed on this. So, and this sounds awful, but a full rip and replace is where we wanted to go. And our CEO at the time said it best. We're doing this because we want to be relevant going forward. We want to thrive, not just survive. And so we are not doing this for a moment in time to say, wow, look at us. We really love doing core conversions, because nobody really wants to do a core conversion. But we we did it to say, hey, we're going to do this and it's going to set us up to catapult us ahead in the future for a momentary few years of pause. And that's really the outlook that we took with the conversion, is we are doing this for the future.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. And I've alluded to this on other episodes and when we talk to clients or really other banks. I think to your point, like you said, we hear there's an ABA stat out there that 20% of banks are looking to maybe make a change. But in reality, only 2 to 3% are actually doing that. But with core modernization, there's a risk involved. But you're saying you're planning for the future. This isn't something you're looking at as of today or 5 years. Like you mentioned, 10, 15 years down the road. Not only you're setting yourself up for success and working out some of those kinks, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a moment, but that perspective to get ahead and take that risk, but also see the rewards of the futuristic approach, I think is pretty smart.
You hit the nail on the head, Rich. One of the most powerful statements that we communicated to our board was, yes, converting core is a risk, but what's the risk if we don't? And that's kind of the most powerful thing that I can put out there is I talk to a lot of banks that want to do it. And I get it. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of resources. Whatever strategic plans you have, 95% of them are going to go on hold for a few years while you do this. But we looked at it as, what's the risk if we don't convert? And we weren't willing to take that risk of becoming irrelevant or not being able to innovate in the manner that we really wanted to innovate and differentiate ourselves in the marketplace.
Yeah, I really like that. I think that's a great approach. Just a question that kind of popped up because I do like asking anyone that I really talk to, but for something like this, where it is newer, there's a lot of circles within the FI space where you can go to colleagues, you can go to events, you can kind of bounce ideas off each other and see their experience. And well, we're lucky to have you on today, but Who did you turn to, or maybe even before the 2020 implementation on the digital side? Where were you getting your information there, just out of curiosity?
So when we're talking about information regarding Nimbus, obviously we spoke with their existing clients at the time. And then just in general, we were looking at talking to consultants, reading industry articles, really trying to immerse ourselves in what happens if we convert. What happens if we don't convert? I happen to have a background where our Nimbus conversion was, I believe it was my ninth core conversion. So I have that background where I've done a few of these. And so I also had that kind of to draw on and say, okay, this is what has to happen. This is what we need to do internally. A lot of conversations that we just had with whomever we could, even our regulators. So one of the things I have to give our president and CEO a ton of credit of is the amount of open conversations that we had with our regulators from the beginning. And that is something I recommend to everybody is if you are even thinking about this, you need to educate your board. You need to have your conversations with your regulators because these people can be very supportive for you and they can also help you see blind spots that you might not see. And so that's something that I'm really proud of. I think we were very, very successful in that.
Yeah, it surely seems that way. And if I read correctly, Nimbus started in 2015, so there was a few years before you guys made that transition 5 years after. But say there's another group out there that's listening and they say, well, we don't have superstar Alita on our team. How would we go about it? Or what are some of the better actions if we don't have the personnel? Like, should they wait or bring somebody in that has that experience to your pedigree? Or is there maybe another avenue you've heard or seen in that sense?
We'll be right back.
Ever feel like your tech budget's running the show instead of supporting it? You're not alone. Between bloated vendor contracts and outdated systems, a lot of banks are stuck paying more for less. And here's the kicker. Those big tech vendors, their contracts are built to protect them, not you. So if you're hesitating to make bold moves because of tech costs, it's time to flip the script. That's where Remedy Consulting comes in. We help banks take back control, cutting through the fine print, optimizing spend, and finding tech solutions that actually fuel growth. And we're offering a free review of your tech stack, spending, and vendor contracts. No pressure, no sales pitch, just expert insight to help you make smarter decisions. Even if we're not the right fit, you'll walk away with clarity and confidence. So go to remedyconsult.net or call 206-295-5776. Let's make your tech work for you, not against you. Thanks for listening to the BankTalk podcast.
Yeah, not necessarily. I don't think you need a person. I think you need. I think it takes a village. You do need people on your team that are kind of ready, willing, and able, regardless of the past. To be quite honest, I wouldn't do that without a consultant. Talking to one right now, just to help navigate through the RFP process and then roll into potentially the project process. We had an external project manager for this, despite the fact that we created an internal core conversion team of 6 people. They were all from different areas of the bank. We made sure we had solid representation from the different areas. Now, our testing teams were obviously a lot larger than that, but we had people full-time dedicated to this, and that helped significantly. And they worked with the external consultants and project managers who worked with Nimbus's project managers. And so you don't need to have gone through a conversion before. You just need to be ready and willing to put in the work. It's a lot of work. And anybody that tells you a conversion was all sparkles and ponies is not telling you the truth because conversions are hard. They're not for the faint of heart. But if you see the end goal and the why is known to everybody, then it does become everybody that's involved. It becomes their passion project and they want to see it successful and they want to get through to the other side. And it really is, it's a cool thing.
Yeah, and I hopefully I didn't throw you for a loop with that one, and maybe gave us a little bit of a plug here at Remedy. But no, I think you're right. Like you still have a day to do, but when we talked offline, like you said, it is a cool thing. Like you probably want to immerse yourself and kind of get things moving. I'm sure there's a lot. preparation and there's a lot that goes into it. So that makes a lot of sense.
It is a question that I get. And one of the questions that I get is the staffing for the conversion and what did we do? And we did create a dedicated team, a dedicated full-time team to do this. I felt at a bank our size, you might not need 6 people, but at a bank our size, that seemed to be the right amount to get us where we needed to be when we needed to be there.
Yeah, that's great to know. Well, a couple other questions I had, Alita. You talked about some of the partners that you're opened up to. Are there any examples of third party like fintech products or partners that you've integrated so far, or maybe some that you're looking at?
Yeah, we're looking. So integration almost immediately, which I still can't believe. I got to give kudos to the internal teams here a ton. Was, less than 6 months post conversion, we were already underway with fully integrating a CRM, and we did not have a CRM prior to Nimbus. We were really waiting for the Nimbus conversion to do this, and so we ran our first live files to CRM less than 6 months post conversion, which just still to this day just absolutely blows my mind. Now that we're getting to steady state, a lot of other fintech partnerships we are looking at, things focused on primarily small business government banking is a huge thing on our roadmap this year for sure. Looking at where do we want to be with instant payments and that piece. And then, of course, just on the core side, leveraging Nimbus is a core provider, but they really are a fintech at heart, and leveraging some of the in-house, either white labeled or homegrown options that they have. The biggest one being leveraging agentic AI into our back office operations, I think is something that is just kind of going to blow everybody's mind. How do you do that in your core system? It's kind of like a foreign language, and we're doing that, and we will be live with that this year. So those are really, really exciting things for me to look in our windshield and say, this is coming and it's going to be pretty awesome.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. Probably something to look forward to. Looking back too, and I don't know how much you can kind of divulge here, but if you were to ask your CFO about how much it costs to maybe get installed or tracking costs, would you be able to provide any listeners like guidance on the cost side of it?
Guidance for sure. Like, I think anything that you put on a piece of paper, add to that, right? Because just you have to think of, if you are going to you have your hard cost for conversions of the core and any integrations that you're going to do with third parties, because maybe you want to keep a third party that you already have integrated with your current core, but they're going to have some sort of implementation or project fee and those things. What are you going to do for staffing? Are you going to create a core conversion team like we did? And then what are you going to do? Are you going to backfill those? And then there's, of course, the things that you can't see. What are lawyer fees going to cost to look at all these contracts? Just
Yeah.
everything that you can think of, and anything you would put into a normal project. Treat this like a normal project, but also have patience and have understanding that once you start digging into a core conversion, I promise you, you are going to uncover things that you did not know about your bank, because we certainly did. And we have plenty of people on staff here that have been here for several decades, and we uncovered some things. And that either caused us to say, we need to consolidate providers to save money, or, oh my goodness, this is a deficiency that we have and we need to fill that deficiency. And then that costs money. So it's really hard to put a hard cost on it or assign an ROI to it off the bat. And since you're doing it for the long run, you really have to look at it as two parts. What are we dealing with now? And then where are we going to be in 5, 10 years, and
Right.
and evaluate it to make sure that is worth it.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I know that's not a great, any CFOs listening, I know that's a horrible answer,
Yeah,
but I'm the
no, no, we
COO, not the
understand.
CFO.
You can't spill all the secrets, let alone numbers and so forth. But
Exactly.
I figured I'd ask.
Yeah.
Well, you talked a little bit about having a team or personnel in place. Talking about maybe looking back at some negatives. Do you think there's maybe, and you've done, like you said, you've done 9 conversions as well in your career, but do you think there's like a cutoff in bank size that maybe you would recommend making this type of transition to Nimbus, looking at the sidecar piece of digital first, or if that wasn't an option, Any other negatives maybe you'd caution some of the listeners?
So, kind of two parts. If you are considering a sidecar core for digital, that's a complete strategy on its own, which I'm more than happy to talk to anybody about if they want to reach out to me. If you want that and you want a sidecar core to do digital and you are interested in converting core, then I think it's a great conversation to have, or just to have the conversations about converting the core from the beginning. If you're going to get into the sidecar core just to get into it, you need to have strategy around it. Even though Nimbus's system is kind of a bank in a box, you still need to put resources on it. It's not turn it on and if you build it, they will come. So we could do a whole different podcast on that. In terms of a size, I don't think there is a size. You can't be too small to want to convert a core if you have big dreams. And if you are trying to figure out, if you're sitting there around your boardroom and you're figuring out your strategic plan, and your strategic plan is going to outpace what your core provider can provide you, and take a good hard look at it too, because they might be telling you we can do this, but put that to the test. So it doesn't matter how small you are. If converting core is for you, then by all means do it. There's really kind of no barriers to entry, in my opinion. The second part to your question is some of the negatives. Obviously, it's a lot of time, right? You've got a lot of time. I mentioned before, you're putting your strategic plan on hold. It's a strain on resources. There is fatigue. It's a very long project. You get project fatigue. So it's not one of those projects that you're dealing with for 6 months to a year and you see the light at the end of the tunnel. It could be a multi-year project, and that brings resource fatigue. A conversion is like a snowflake. You know what one is, but each one looks different. So the lessons learned on the last one, you try to apply to this one, but there's always something that you're not expecting. So expect the unexpected for sure. And that's really kind of the foundation of any core conversion decision that you're going to make is do you have the capacity to take years out of your strategic plan and potentially your forward momentum in order to catapult forward when you're done? And if you have the will to do that, then by all means, again, I go back to what I said before. It's what's the risk if you don't?
I guess on your experience too, you've done 9 conversions. Would you say this one's the most complex, or how would you maybe differentiate it compared to the other ones you've done?
This one was the most unique because Nimbus was and is a disruptor. They are a different core. And so and we are the largest bank on a modern core in the country, and we are their largest bank on a modern core. So that added a level of uniqueness in that it was truly a partnership with Nimbus for them to say, listen, we want to make sure we have everything that we need to get more banks your size. And we said to Nimbus, hey, we want to make sure that we go live with something that is even better than we had before. So with that, we really created a unique partnership in which we were building things not for People's Bank, but we were really building things for the future of Nimbus and their success and their ability to compete in a much larger space than before. So that was a really unique experience for me, is getting to do that rather than the core company saying, hey, this is how it works. It was actually a dialogue, and it was literally a partnership to say, this is how we can make it better. And they really encourage all of their customers to do that with them, is have a dialogue, and it is a partnership. They want to be your strategic plan partner, and that's really what was different for me for this one.
That's refreshing to hear, because I think going back to the point of there's a lot of groups out there that would want to make that change. Now, whether they're internally prepared or have the capacity or really just wherewithal to make that type of conversion, I'm sure people are happy to hear that they're getting a partnership and they're getting, what they're kind of maybe told a little bit more upfront than some of these other conversions that we've worked through and here in the industry, that now the grass isn't greener, or you're not getting pigeonholed into something that maybe isn't the best fit.
Yes.
And this kind of just popped in my head, thinking you obviously have a great relationship with Nimbus. If we were to ask them on this podcast, kind of maybe some things that they would do differently on their end, what have you heard from them? I don't know if you know that off the top of your head, but I figured maybe just from their perspective, because now they've done a few of these, maybe what would they say?
I do know because I've talked about it together. This isn't all of the things, but one of the things that we have said is in that partnership, we both wish that. So I wish on my side that I would have pushed the team a little bit more to say, stop trying to create what we already have. And that's a problem that you get into, right? You're moving people's cheese. So you're going on a platform which the buttons that they push and where they click is much different than where they did yesterday. And so
Yeah.
as we were going through things, there was a lot of pushback, not a lot of pushback, but enough pushback where it was like, but this is how I do it today. I don't like it the way that you're telling me to do it. Is it you don't like it or is it just different? And so that's one of the things that I wish I did on my side. And on the Nimbus side, I think they would probably say, yeah, I wish we would have pushed back to a little bit more. And instead of saying, yeah, we can change that, because what happened was we got to the point where even yesterday I was asked by somebody, hey, why did we make this decision at conversion? And I said, well, that looks like a good old fashioned case of that's the way we always did it. And now we need to change that because that's not the better way to do it. And Nimbus is saying, we think you should be doing it this way. And we recognize we built it for you this way at conversion due to our partnership. But we're telling you this is the better way to do it. And I'm saying, yes, you're right. It's the better way to do it. And we need to change. So it really takes an open mind. That's really what I would say. And I don't want to speak for Nimbus on the other side too, but that's something that we've actively talked about.
Yeah, I'm sure that's just, again, it sounds like a great partnership. It's really working well for yourself. So that's awesome.
Yes.
Well, I've given you quite a few questions myself, but is there anything else before we kind of wrap up here, Alita, that you wanted to mention or anything else that would be topical for our audience?
Yeah, first of all, I'm happy to talk about this stuff all day long. So if anybody wants to reach out to me about sidecar cores or even core conversions, please don't hesitate to do so. But one of the misconceptions I actually want to take the opportunity to clear up, because I have been on a little bit of a press tour with Nimbus since our conversion. And one of the things I keep hearing is, oh, we can't go to Nimbus because we don't have developers on staff. And since they're a modern and open core, we'd have to have the development in-house. And that is the furthest thing from the truth. We had no developers on site, and we leverage Nimbus and their team. So there's a lot of things that people hear when they hear modern, cloud-based, API-driven, that I'm happy to clear up. I'm happy to discuss, but that's just one of the things that pops into my head.
That's awesome information. And I know we're fortunate to have you on with us here at BankTalk because, again, being down in Arizona at the event, you were hot commodity, and I've heard your name pop up a few times with other podcasts and so forth. So we really appreciate your time, Alita. And again, thank you so much for joining us. And we really appreciate the insight and wish you well with Nimbus and your future endeavors.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Well, that will do it for today's episode at Bank Talk. We appreciate you listening. Keep listening, keep learning. We'll talk to you the next time around. Thanks.
Thank you for listening to the Bank Talk podcast, brought to you by Remedy Consulting. If you like what you hear, please rate, review, and share our work with others. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.